get this question a lot, and it's a brilliant question. Why did the Targaryens build the dragon pit so far from the Red Keep? Because in theory, you'd want your dragons nearby. You'd want them on hand. So in order to answer this question, we're going to talk a little bit about King's Landing itself, the history of the city, the layout. I'm actually really excited to talk about this. I found this incredible artwork of King's Landing, and it really gives you a sense of the proportions of how the city is eventually laid out. But it didn't start like this. When Aegon and Visenya and Rhaenys launched their conquest, they come from Dragonstone and they land at a tiny fishing village on the mainland of Westeros, and that is what will one day become King's Landing. But when they arrive, all they see really is a small, tiny little settlement, a hamlet, if you will, and these 3 hills that are just carved into the landscape. So it kind of feels like, oh, it's kind of meant to be. There's 3 of us, there's 3 hills. Let's use this as our base. And that's what they do. And on the biggest of these 3 hills, they call it Aegon's Hill. And they decide that's where they're going to build their first fortress. This is long before the Red Keep. This is the Aegon Fort. Now, this was a very rudimentary fort. You know, it was thrown up fairly quickly and it would slowly expand over time, but it wasn't anything fancy. It was a largely wooden fortress. It wasn't anything flash. And so eventually there was a decision made, we're going to tear this down and we're going to build a new castle, which would be the Red Keep. It's actually the idea of Aegon the Conqueror, but he dies not that long after. And so it's his sons that take over the construction of the Red Keep. So you've got Aegon's Hill and then these other 2 hills. One is Visenya's Hill and one is Rhaenys's. Now, one of the things the Targaryens did was oversee the development, the construction, slowly over time, the expanding of this tiny fishing village into a fully fledged capital city. And with that comes new buildings. And initially, when Aegon first arrived and took over, there wasn't anywhere for people to worship the faith of the 7. There was this tiny kind of, it was basically like an old boat that was like on the shoreline, and that's where people would gather to worship. It wasn't a proper place to gather. The High Septon was like, we need a church, we need a proper building to worship, and that's what they did. They built the Great Sept, and that was built on Visenya's Hill. So the majority of people who lived in King's Landing, who follow the faith of the 7, they now have somewhere that they can go and worship, somewhere proper. And it's all thanks to the Targaryens, and they built it on this hill so everyone can see it. So that leaves the 3rd hill, Rhaenys's Hill. And Rhaenys is killed during the attempted conquest of Dorne. In the eyes of the Targaryens, Rhaenys is a martyr, as is her dragon Meraxes. And so they want to honour her. And so they decide, we're going to build a Sept of Remembrance on Rhaenys's Hill. That's what actually was there before the dragon pit. It served 2 functions. It honoured Rhaenys. People knew her name lived on, but also it kind of appeased the faith of the 7. However, it doesn't last. During the reign of Maegor Targaryen, he actually gets into multiple beefs with the faith of the 7, with the faith militant. It's non-stop fighting. And one of the things that Maegor does is he decides to destroy the Sept of Remembrance. He's like, I'm tearing it down. So he does just that. So now Rhaenys's Hill is empty again. And that's when Maegor makes the decision. We're going to use Rhaenys's Hill and we're going to build something dedicated to House Targaryen, something honouring our power, our dragons. We're going to build the Dragon Pit. And that's why that location was chosen. It was more symbolic than anything. It wasn't really a practical choice. And let's think about the timing of all this. When Maegor decides to do this, they are still constructing the Red Keep. That's been in progress for many a year, and because it's so large and expansive, it's taking a bit of time. So you'd think maybe it would have been a better idea to try and build the Dragon Pit attached to the Red Keep if you're already doing construction work. Like, do you know what I mean? I feel like that would have been the sensible option. But sensible, that's not a word frequently associated with Maegor. He was wanting to make a point. He wanted to remind everybody, we are the Targaryens and we have dragons and we are more powerful than you. And so no matter where you go in King's Landing, you're going to see this enormous structure, and it's going to be a constant 24/7 reminder of the power of House Targaryen. That's the reason why they built it on the top of this hill. It wasn't the most logical decision. It was all about sending a message. And this is the ultimate symbol of this. We've created a mansion and it's just for the dragons.